Hello and welcome to episode 8 of A Personal Branding Story. Now today I want to talk about how perfectionism is a utopia that is just unattainable. I talked about this in The Times today in the Raconteur feature about productivity. Hopefully you can see that there. It's one of those things that I've been thinking about and we've been working hard on here at Talkative in terms of actually being as productive as we possibly can with our content. And again, for me as an individual, trying to build my personal brand along with working at Talkative, how we can actually be more productive, how we can create more and better content whilst actually not necessarily striving for perfection, because perfectionism can be a real barrier. I found that it can be stifling to creativity. You try so hard to make sure that everything's 100% perfect when actually there is no 100% perfect, because what may be perfect to you isn't necessarily perfect for everyone else. And it's actually, when you draft something, you redraft it 3 or 4 times. For the sake of it being a blog post that say 1,000 words, is that really worth the time it's taken to try and get it close to that perfection? Now maybe instead you should be thinking about how they're setting a minimum standards list. So i.e. there are no things like spelling, punctuation, grammar. It's all broken up. There are no paragraphs that are excessively long. There has to be an image that's related. Minimum standards that mean that all your content is consistent and of a level of quality. So it's always, you're going to hit that as your minimum mark, but you shouldn't always try and have perfection as your minimum mark. Yes, you should maybe strive for it, but you shouldn't be using it as a way it means that you create less. Because I'm not saying that you need to create more content, but you need to be more efficient because there are other things you need to do in your day. Time is finite, and trying to be a perfectionist is actually a barrier to productivity. Now, I agree that you want to create as close to perfect as possible, but just how realistic is that? Especially when it takes certain lengths of time to create a project. Do you release something when it's 100% ready? Do you release something when it's 80% ready and then try and type the little bits that don't really matter? Are those tiny little bits, for the sake of it delaying the project by 3 weeks, is it worth actually doing those little bits after launch? Because are people going to notice them? Or does that really damage your reputation? This is something I'm thinking a lot about at the moment, and I'm of the mindset that perfection is a utopia that is unreachable and it's unattainable. But I don't think we should necessarily not strive for some sort of perfection, but you have to really balance it out with the time it takes in order to create that content, to craft your message. And actually, by having a minimum standards list, you know that if it meets all those minimum criteria, then there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't publish that. I'd love to know your thoughts on perfectionism and actually on productivity, and whether you agree with me that perfectionism is potentially a barrier to productivity. And if so, how can you actually potentially improve that? Have you done this in your own business? Again, or as an individual, this is a personal branding story, and this is something that I love learning and trying to test myself on. It was really, really cool to be picked up in The Times today. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow with another episode.